It's John Carpenter's Halloween on Gene and Roger Talk Movies, the 1978 slasher classic. Our second John Carpenter film. We did The Thing in our very first episode.
First episode, yep.
And so let's get right into it. Gene, initial thoughts on John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah, John Carpenter's Halloween. Yeah, it's interesting. John Carpenter in this movie, he shows the kids are watching scary movies, and so there's like the opening credits for The Thing up here. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is he seeing into the future? Because he does a remake of The Thing just a few years later. But anyway, the movie, I don't know. I think it's a horror movie classic. You know, until the Blair Witch Project came around, this was the highest movie that had a return on investment ever. The production budget was not that much, it's the low six figures. It made millions. I don't know the exact figure, millions. And so,
but it's $70 million in its initial release.
Yeah,
and it was a $300,000 budget thereabouts.
Right. So massive return on investment. It's immensely popular. You know, it took the Blair Witch Project, which is $60,000 investment, and they made $245 million worldwide gross. So that eventually beat it. But the movie immensely popular in its time. But you know, it's like as human beings, as creatures, we're condemned to live in the now. I think people, you know, we have to live in the now. We can't, as much as we want, we can't live in the future, and we can't live in the past. And this movie was 1978. And looking at it from modern eyes, I mean, some people, I think Roger really enjoys this movie. Did you say you just saw it 30 times?
Well, and the cool thing, Gene, the thing I really like here.
I'm throwing in her butt.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, because what I'm saying is, for the listeners out there, of course I saw this movie when it first came out. Gene saw it for the first time ever
this
week. And so it's really interesting to me to hear his perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so looking at it from modern eyes, 2022, watching a lot of like horror movies, I believe masterful horror movies, you know, Hereditary, you know, The Witch, you know, other movies like that. So, and then watching this, it's like, well, what are you doing? It's not scary at all. You know, it's just the movie it's full of holes. It's full of inconsistencies. The music was praised at the time, but it just seems like flat and kind of a little simplistic. And it's like there are jump scares in it. And, you know, it's kind of silly, you know, so yeah, we can get into that, but you know, maybe the movie is they talk about fate. You can't escape your fate, Laurie says. Well, actually, Laurie teachers said that, but maybe this movie is about fate, that death is pursuing all of us. We can't escape it. Maybe something like that. But maybe other than that, there's also some other themes in this movie that I really, really don't like, and we can end up talking about that as well.
Well, and of course, this is a revered classic that Gene is throwing in the trash bin here.
Well, I don't know about throwing in the trash bin, because I did watch Siskel and Ebert, their review, again, back in 1978, and they were both thumbs up. They really liked it. Although I did somehow think that, now help me out, Roger, I always forget which one is Siskel and which one's Ebert.
Well, Siskel is the thinner fellow.
The Siskel, yeah. So Siskel says, I think his analysis was like, what are you in fourth grade or something? He says, like, the film is an upbeat thing. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, let's just get a little more contextual here. You know, give me some evidence. And I know he's talking about the music, and I think that their reviews seem to center, their positive reviews seem to center around that. And then Ebert was talking about this movie compared to other movies, and I think maybe we should have an episode where we talk about the evolution of horror movies, but it seems like before Halloween, a lot of other horror movies were really exploitive, you know, almost misogynistic, you know, just slash, just gore all over the place. And so Ebert was refreshed that this movie had some thought put into it, and clearly it does. There was some good cinematography, and I agree that there is. You know, the music, you know, again, for the time, again, was great. It was really well. And you can follow the director's vision. You can see it as it progresses. And you can see it's just like, like murder and horror visit an average American town. Haddonfield, Illinois, 1963, and then later on, I forget the date.
1978.
Yeah, 1978. Thanks, but yeah. So I think Siskel and Ebert were appreciating the movie for its refreshness, that is brought a newness to the horror movie genre, and for that time.
And they would rue that later on because, of course, John Carpenter's Halloween is the template for all of the slasher movies that would follow. So one of the reasons this movie is such a classic is, this was your first real mass-consumed slasher movie. Yes, there was others, Black Christmas, a lot of the Giallo movies from Italy. But this was the first one that really took off and people really went to the theater to see, and it scared people. And then, of course, we were deluged for the next 4 years with hundreds and hundreds of slashers. And, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis is in this film. It is her first role, and she then, of course, parlayed this success into a series of slasher films that she starred in. Terror Train, Prom Night, of course, multiple Halloween sequels throughout the years.
And we're going to review, just interject, Halloween Ends next week.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that because I was thinking you maybe would want to cancel that now that you despise this one. But
no, let's still watch Halloween. It makes a good comparison contrast.
And I do want to point out, of course, Donald Pleasance is in this.
I like Donald Pleasance. I like that guy.
And he really sets the tone for this film. One of the great things about this movie is, and I think Gene can agree on this, is Donald Pleasance's dialogue explaining the Michael Myers character as being this embodiment of evil. And, I tried to help him for the first 8 years he was in my sanitarium, and the next 7 because I realized he was so evil and so with, uncaring, black eyes, and
stare at a wall.
And so he's really setting the tone for, this is a dangerous person, almost maybe otherworldly in his evilness. And that is really a very effective thing. And I also, of course, have to give a shout out to our beloved PJ Souls. Everyone loves PJ Souls. She's in this film. Of course, you may remember her from Carrie and then Stripes, of course. But most importantly, Rock and Roll High School with the Ramones. If you haven't seen that film, obviously it does not fit into the scope of our podcast, but it is great. But anyway.
Yeah, just a little PJ Souls comment. One of my favorite movies is probably even still, this is, I don't know, maybe it's kind of silly, but a movie, a coming-of-age movie, Breaking Away, again around the same era, about 1980. And I thought P.J. Souls was the main woman in Breaking Away, and I actually had to look it up, but actually it's a different woman, but they bear a resemblance. Yeah, so I thought, that girl was in Breaking Away. But it's a different person.
PJ Souls ain't got no time for breaking away. She'll be doing Rock and Roll High School with the Ramones instead.
Right.
But I and this movie, of course, is the tentpole for all of the slashers that would follow. And so one of the reasons I think Siskel and Ebert really liked this, as did most critics during the time, was it was fresh and new at that moment. And so it was interesting with Gene having never seen it, and I don't believe, Gene, you're a huge slasher movie fan.
No,
anyway.
Let's go over the formula for slashers.
But,
I'll tell you why I don't like it.
Everything about this film is setting up basically every slasher movie that came after this one is exactly set up like this.
The formula.
Yeah, there's always the final girl, and there's always this chase sequence at the end where she's trying to get away, and you think you've got the killer down, and then oh no, he's back again, and stuff like that. I mean, some movies do a final guy, like The Burning did a final guy, but most of the time it's the final girl, and most of the time it's the pure final girl, right? Jamie Lee Curtis is
Laurie, and she's the studious girl compared to Linda and Annie, who are the party girls. Yeah. But I was going to say, if you watch the later movies, then because I was always wondering in this movie, is why was Michael Myers pursuing Laurie? What's the deal with that? And in sequels, I guess it's revealed that, although it's not alluded to at all in this movie, that Michael Myers and Laurie are brother and sister.
Right, and we can go down the nightmare road that is the Halloween sequels because, of course, those of us who are really into horror, you certainly remember Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. You remember the end of Halloween 5, where some man in black comes in and busts Michael out of jail. Halloween 6, suddenly there's this like Wiccan death cult that kind of worship him, all this weird stuff. And so, my opinion, all of the sequels are basically garbage. And in the
That's
context,
awesome.
one of the reasons that the original works so well, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, right? Death coming to this small, quiet town,
Right.
is there is no real explanation for what he's doing. He's just
No.
this escaped, dangerous evil that has come to this town, and he saw those girls and is like, okay, I'm going to kill them.
Right.
And that's really where a lot of the horror comes from this film, is it's just so random. And then all these sequels are trying to do this elaborate backstory and all this other
Right.
stuff. And all it did is like, oh, I think I fell asleep during Halloween 5. I just was like, oh my God, get me out of this theater, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But, so in the context of this film, and one of the reasons it works so well is, yep, no explanation, and you've got Donald Pleasance's character just going around,
Yep.
you know, this is
authority.
evil and
Sam
everything.
Loomis.
Yeah, and so it really, I think, for its time, and even still today, this movie does have the ability to scare you, and it's very effective. And I think the music soundtrack, of course, is iconic.
It is. Like, I've never seen the movie, but as soon as I turned the movie, I saw it this week, like Roger said. But as soon as I turned it on, oh yeah, I've heard that music before.
all the time. You know?
Yeah.
Any haunted house you go to, of course, that music is playing,
Right.
and all sorts of stuff like that. And of course, again, that's John Carpenter doing that score himself. He's
Yeah, he did it.
renowned for doing his own scores: Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York. All of those
Which
are
Donald
solid.
Pleasance was in.
Right, of course. Yeah, Donald Pleasance as the president of the
The
United States. The
president.
British guy as the president
Right,
of the United
right.
States. But,
Oh, my
well,
gosh.
and you did talk about the cinematography here. We should, because I
Right.
neglected to do this when we talked about The Thing. But Dean Cundey was the cinematographer on this film and was a longtime collaborator with John Carpenter. And he is a masterful cinematographer for sure. The film, the scene sets and things of that nature are great. The camera setups are great. There's a great scene kind of near the end when Laurie is investigating the house across the street, and how they did the effect, I'm not sure, but Michael Myers suddenly, his face kind of is illuminated in shadow, and it's a really tense scene. If you did you catch that?
Yeah,
Gene?
yeah. It's clear, but it's good how it's done because there's Laurie looking around the house, and there's the dark spot. I mean, you know, houses that don't have lights on have lots of dark spots, and then all of a sudden, you know, you start to see Michael Myers' face in this dark spot. Well, she doesn't see him at this particular moment, but
Right.
yeah, it was a good effect.
Yeah.
And another effect that I like is that they were in the car. Again, Annie, because Annie could drive. Annie and Laurie were in the car, but the camera was in the back seat, and so we're with Annie and Laurie, but from the back seat. And typically, you know, when you have a car scene, this shot from the front. Yeah, another interesting thing I liked in the car sequence in your back seat is that there was a interesting use of lens flare. You know, this appears a lot in, you know, J.J. Abrams' Super 8 movie much later. But yeah, it was very artistic, and I thought at the time, it's, you know, pretty cool. So I like that. And there were other scenes that were, yeah, it's good cinematography.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there was like a malevolent, like evilness, because like at the beginning in Haddonfield, 1963, you know, Michael Myers is a 6-year-old kid, and I'm sure up until before the movie, he's just a regular 6-year-old kid. But for somehow maybe he gets possessed with something. He grabs a big knife and goes upstairs and he kills his sister for no apparent reason at all. You know, so then he escapes from the mental institution in 1978, Smith's Grove. And then yeah, and then he goes on a rampage and he starts to kill these teens. Although he does kill this one driver of a truck to
Oh, yeah, he's
change
got to
clothes.
get his scary coveralls.
Yeah, yeah. To get the scary coveralls, he had to kill this driver of this truck.
Well, but I think we should point out because some of the criticism that this movie did get was this voyeuristic kind of perception and the way they use the camera. Because at the beginning and throughout this film, you are seeing from the viewpoint of the killer. So you're looking like in the beginning when that young boy puts the clown mask on.
Yeah, you're seeing through his eyes.
You're seeing through his eyes. And so there was a number of critics that were like, you know, is this an attempt to kind of identify with the killer? What is the director really trying to do here? Of course, John Carpenter was not thinking along those lines. He was thinking more of, yeah, it's going to increase tension because, oh, they're being watched and, you know, he's
Right.
walking up the stairs now and we know they're in the bedroom or we know we're over there and things like that. But there was a lot of, you know, what criticism there was of this film was really centered around that. Like, hey, are we trying to identify with the killer here? And that really became more prevalent as slashers got more and more popular, where, yeah, maybe some of these directors are just, identify with this killer, you know.
Yeah, that criticism just kind of rings hollow for me because it's just a cinematography technique.
Yeah.
You know, that's all it is. You know, if you try to read more into that, then I really think that you're reaching. But like,
There was a lot of critics that were reaching then, and that is still talked about to this
I
day.
think, you know, I don't know, people just try to find negative things where they don't really, or they're not really there. You know, you can make up a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, but this Michael Myers house where the killing in 1963 it exists until the 1978, but no one lives there. So it comes into local legend as this
Right.
haunted house, you know. And then Lori, which is her father is a real estate agent, Strode Real Estate. You see the little sign on the side of the car, and so I guess there's a person who's interested in buying the house. So Lori has to go to the house. The haunted house. Yeah, they call it the Myers house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
The Myers place.
Yeah, Myers place, and then they go up to the house, and she's got to put a key under the doormat. I guess they didn't have those realtor lock boxes back then, but I kind of think that they did. But anyway,
It's a small town.
yeah, they all trust each other. So she goes up and she puts the key under the mat, and Michael Myers has already escaped by this point, and so he is in the house, and we're looking at Lori put the key and then walk away from the house from his eyes. So in a way, I kind of think that maybe the reason why Michael Myers went after Lori is because she came to his house and maybe reminded him of his sister in a little way.
And I think that is also indicative of how effective this movie can be, because this is in this movie, the original Halloween. Forget all the sequels, of course, but in the original Halloween, it's just so random. Oh, you put a
Right.
key under this mat, and now you are a target of this
Right.
crazed killer.
Yeah, in this movie, there's no connection brought out that Michael Myers and Lori are in any way related. You know, they exist in the same town, Haddonfield, and it turns out the Myers house is only like 3 blocks away from Lori's house. And so, but really, the outside of Michael Myers, this movie really revolves around three women. There's Lori, you know, the main character, Jamie Lee Curtis. Then there's Linda, PJ Souls.
Love some PJ Souls.
And then there's Annie. She is a darker haired woman, and she can drive. And so she is actually the second victim, I believe. Yeah. And so, yeah, the part of this movie, I guess what kind of doesn't work for me is like a lot of great horror movies. There's always the tension building, and I didn't really catch a lot of that with this movie because there's a large section of this movie kind of in maybe from maybe about the 2/5 mark to about maybe the 3/5 mark around there, where we're just really hanging out with Annie and Lori and a little bit with Linda. We're just hanging out with these girls, kind of following their lives and their plans for Halloween. And it turns out they're going to babysit in houses that are just right across the street from each other. And so they hatch a plan where Annie's going to be babysitting that house across the street from where Lori is. And then Lydia is going to call her boyfriend Bob. And then they're going to go to that house, mess around, and Annie's going to find some kind of cover. Or maybe Annie will take her babysitting kids over to Lori, and Lori, being the little Girl Scout girl, so watch the kids where both Lydia and then Annie could, mess around with their boyfriends, in Annie's babysitting house. And so they kind of hatched this plan, and so there's a lot of like them talking on the phone, a lot of phone use, which is so nostalgic. They're picking up those old-fashioned landline phones, so yeah, and so it's. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time here. There's some moments where Annie and Lori are together. There's especially they're walking down. Well, as they're together, this strange person passes them in a car. It's just really creepy, and then he like stops the car, and yeah, and so there's a little creepy moment there. But then the car drives on, and then Lori and Annie are walking down a street, and then Lori sees Michael Myers ahead of them behind this hedge, and then he tells, look, Annie, there's somebody in front of us. And so Annie is just really, I don't know, she's really outgoing. Annie's a very outgoing young woman. And so then she runs up and looks behind the hedge and tries to pull a joke on Lori. And of course there's nobody there. Because that's the thing about Michael Myers is there one second and is gone the next. He has like superhuman strength. And then it seems like he doesn't. Because there's also a scene, I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but Michael Myers goes to a cemetery and he uproots the headstone for his sister, Judith Myers. And later on we find out that it ends up in a very interesting place. It's actually the house where Annie is babysitting. We can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, but this Michael Myers character seems to be imbued with the ability to appear and disappear, things like that.
Well, standard slasher trope there, of course. I mean, it wasn't standard at that time when that movie came out.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about it is there is sequences all throughout this film. So Gene is talking about some of the mundane scenes there, but sandwiched around those and in between those scenes is always going to be some sort of shot of Michael Myers somewhere, looking at them, driving by them. He was looking at the little kid.
He was looking at the kid.
All that stuff, because I really think Carpenter was trying to imbue this movie with, yep, you can have these mundane conversations, you can plan for the future, you can do all this stuff, but evil, death, is always right over here. It's right off screen, it's right over here, it's driving by you, that kind of thing. And that's really what I think is effective for a lot of people at the time, and I still think to this day, of building that tension and that unease that this movie can do. Because at the end of the day, these characters come across, to me anyway, as relatively average teen, high school type girls, right? Of course, they're going to have some elaborate scheme to get their boyfriends over while they were babysitting and all this, and
yeah,
stuff
nothing
like
unusual
that.
there.
And so, again, the movie is 92 minutes long, I think. So could some of the stuff been trimmed a little bit? Of course, but it still is a pretty tight film.
Yeah, when a lot of the scenes, of course, whenever Michael Myers appears, that John Carpenter music comes into forefront. So he's like in a way, he's kind of telling us how we should feel, which I don't know if I really like. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed kind of flat, Yeah, it's just kind of not buying it. Yeah, it just seemed kind of flat right there. Yeah, but I think of the character of Dr. Loomis, Sam Loomis, the Donald Pleasance, he kind of, in a way, he brings everything back, because he goes into Haddonfield and he talks with the police officer. Again, it's all connected. It's a small town, and the police officer is Annie's father. And so, the Donald Pleasance kind of brings everything back, the nature of this guy. We got to watch out. It's like he says, death has come to your town.
Yes, great line. Great line.
Exactly. And so, but then, I don't know. I guess the part, Marjorie, maybe we can talk about this, is like, it seems like a horror slasher trope is just that there's got to be a little skin shown.
Well, yeah, Gene, come on, what's up? You've got to
But
have
it just seems to me it's just like,
every woman in a slasher movie has to take a shower at some point.
but it's like, see, I sighed. There's a big sigh. I'll sigh again. The 6-year-old Michael Myers kills his sister after she had just been with her boyfriend, and so we get a big scene, big flash of her bare breasts, and then when poor Annie, she's in her house just trying to babysit the kid, and she's hatched this elaborate plan. Michael Myers appears in her house, but right before that, of course, somehow she spills butter all over herself. She's got to take all of her clothes off right there in front of the camera. So we see her underwear bikini bottom, and then but it's shot from the back. And so, but then then she puts on like a t-shirt and she goes to wash her clothes, and then she gets stuck in a window because she can't open the door. And then it just seems really silly. And then she's stuck in a window, so we're looking at her bottom for a little bit, and then later on, PJ Souls, her and her boyfriend are there, and so we get a little glimpse of PJ Souls' little breast. And so it just seems to me that such a tactic, it's the slasher movie trope, of course. Yeah. But it seems to me it's just like it's kind of an admission of weakness, because I think the directors, producers, whatever, are admitting that their storyline is weak, and so they have to add something else to keep the viewers' interest, or to keep them from even getting bored because their story's weak. So you have to add this other stuff, and it just seems like, to me, it's like, if you're going to be horror, let's just be horror. If you want to make a little soft porn, then do a little soft porn. So just be what you want to be. It's like, take a little bit more time and effort, and just make it genuinely scary. Just all that stuff. It's just complete distraction. You're just wondering, what in the world? Why am I watching this? It just doesn't seem to add anything to the movie at all. But I know, it's part of that slasher. When you watch a slasher movie, this is what you're going to see. So I guess I'm being critical of the whole slasher movie.
Well, but I will, when you're talking about nudity in a horror film,
Yeah.
Of course, all of us who watch horror regularly, we know why we're seeing this stuff. But
it doesn't appear in lots of horror movies. It just doesn't.
Oh, most of the horror movies I've seen. But what I'm going to say is, one of the reasons you do scenes like that from an artistic perspective when you're talking horror is, when are we as human beings the most vulnerable? We're in a shower. We're having sex. We are, naked, right? And so that does have the ability to build a greater fear within the viewer, because, I'm in the shower, and like Psycho is a perfect example.
Psycho.
She's in the shower. Here comes crazy person with the knife. You are defenseless because you don't even have clothes on, right? And so you can do that. Now, we all know these exploitation films, these B movies. Of course, the producers in the background going, "Oh, we need more breasts," right?
Right.
And things
and I
like
think
that.
Siskel and Ebert were referring to that because this was not so exploitive. Of course, this movie showed those things, but
right, and
just brief glimpses. It's not like we were lingering on anything for a super long time.
Right, and then I think
but if I could interject,
oh, go right ahead.
back to Psycho. With Janet Leigh, right, was in the shower.
Janet Leigh, who of course is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, there you go. But to Alfred Hitchcock's credit, if you carefully watch that scene, no, you don't see Janet Leigh. You don't see her breasts. You don't see really anything. She's in the shower. Of course, she doesn't have any clothes on, but you don't see anything. So I think, is it necessary to show those things? I think not, because I would think you'd say Psycho is It's a great movie, great horror movie, and it doesn't go down that road.
Well,
It doesn't
I'm
show
going
it.
to interject right there. It doesn't show anything. One, Alfred Hitchcock, of course, is very artistic. But two, it was 1960. So you're not seeing bare breasts on the screen. Alfred Hitchcock in 1972's Frenzy had all that stuff in, right? So when he had the freedom to show things, he did.
Yeah, but I guess my point is that is it necessary? And because I think Psycho shows it's not necessary. But nevertheless, okay, this movie has those elements. It's a slasher film, so it's there. Yeah, but yeah, there's Michael Myers. In a way, I kind of like the whole idea of the fate. You're condemned to your fate. You know, death is going to come for you no matter what. And so maybe Michael Myers embodies that. He's got supernatural powers. You know, but I wish the movie was a little bit more consistent. There's jumping ahead towards the end. You know, Laurie's in her house and she's told the two kids that she's babysitting to stay in the room, and then she kind of like because Michael Myers is in the house now, and so he comes down the hallway, and then she goes into another bedroom, opens up the French doors, like she went out, but then she hides in the closet. But Michael Myers I guess is too smart for that trick, and so he starts to tear down these closet doors, and it seems to take him an incredibly long time to get through these closet doors. And I'm just thinking the whole time, is like earlier in the movie, you got that tombstone that you pulled out of the graveyard. It's probably, how much does a tombstone weigh? I mean, this is not a little one. It's 300 pounds, 250, 300 pounds. And he was upstairs, you know, on a bed, you know, right in front of, I mean, poor Annie. Poor Annie's little, yeah, she's already dead. But he kind of staged a whole little horror little bedroom right there for
his little Halloween display right
yeah,
there,
because there's the tombstone, Annie's body. The tombstone is on the head of the bed. Annie's body is on the bed, you know. So Laurie starts to freak out, and then she opens the closet, and then Linda's boyfriend, I think Paul, no, Bob, Bob, his body is in a closet. So he is hanging upside down for some reason, and he is swinging. And then Laurie opens another closet, and there's Linda. But her eyes are open, but they're all dead. And so she's freaking out. But then, yeah, so Michael Myers has the strength to get like a 300-pound headstone, first of all, out of the ground with no apparent machinery. And then he gets it to upstairs, puts it at the top of this bed, 300-pound tombstone, right? And then he has a hard time getting through closet doors. You know, closet doors, oh my gosh, they're flimsy as heck. I mean, even I could probably, if I really wanted to, could rip off a closet doors in probably like 3 seconds. But it just takes him a really long time. Just little things like that. It just kind of just blow it for me.
Well, and I will point out the sequence where Jamie Lee Curtis discovers all of her friends dead. That is, again, a standard slasher movie trope for the final girl. The final girl always has to go and discover all of her dead friends, and their bodies are, just like
right.
that.
They're staged
and all this stuff. But I think slasher movies are not exactly designed around common sense or whatever.
Right.
So you always
yes.
You always have a scene where, the killer can do this amazing thing, but then you have another scene where, why can't he get through that closet door? I mean, Friday the 13th movies are great for this, where why is it that Jason Voorhees can walk kind of slowly and these other people are in a full-out sprint and he can somehow catch them, right?
Right.
You know, it's just you got to accept some of these things. But I think that particular scene, as far as the ratcheting of tension and the horror element, is great because there's a light bulb in that closet.
Right, it's on.
And it's kind of these latticed like little doors, and so he's using his arm to kind of bust through there, and he turns the light on kind of by accident, and you kind of get this glimpse of him, and Laurie is in there all the way in the corner, and and the camera is from her perspective for one of the few times in this film where you now are identifying completely with Laurie. as this entity this killer is trying to break through this thing to absolutely murder you. And so it's a good scene right there as far as, and shows and demonstrates, I think, the masterfulness of John Carpenter when it comes to horror. That scene is great.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But
Well, and then it shows also the trope that would continue with the final girl, where suddenly the final girl is super resourceful, right? She grabs a coat hanger, fashions this weapon out of it.
Michael Myers in the eye.
And stabs him in the eye. He drops the knife. She picks it up.
And then she
rams it into him.
Yeah. And then she kind of escapes. But Michael Myers, and then he collapses. But of course, is he really? But remember, downstairs, she had already stabbed him with like a crochet needle in his neck, and she thought she had killed him.
Yeah.
But no, walks up the stairs.
Right, another trope of slasher movies, right? The killer is never dead.
He's never dead. Yeah, he's like repeated jump scares here, and so after she stabs him and in the eye. And in the neck, he gets up, and they fight in the hallway. But she takes his mask off, and then you see this is the Michael Myers. You know, this is a human being there. But then I think at this time, Donald Pleasance appears because the kids had come out the front door, so it alerted him that this is the house I should check out. So he goes in there, and then he has a gun, and then he starts shooting at him, of course, and then he ends up going through those French doors over the balcony. He shoots him like 6 times.
Oh, he unloads that weapon.
Yeah, yeah, the revolver. I think he empties the magazine. Yeah, and then he looks over the edge, and then there's bodies there. And then he goes in and checks with Laurie, and of course he goes back, looks over where Michael was, and what do you see now? He's gone. Yeah, and the movie kind of ends right there, and but
well,
yeah,
and
I
think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the great parts of the film is that ending, because Jamie Lee Curtis is saying that was the boogeyman. There's been the kid that she was babysitting was always getting tormented about, the boogeyman's going to get you, and then he kind of sees Michael Myers throughout the night. Of course, he's a little kid, so nobody believes what he's seeing.
Nobody believes him.
And then finally, Laurie is like, at the end, they're going, that was the boogeyman. And then Donald Pleasance says, yeah, it was. You're right. And then it cuts to the end credits right there.
Right, and the end credits, if anything, I'll give props to the movie for this, is at the very end, all you hear is Michael Myers breathing. As the credits are rolling, you hear his breathing. So he's not dead. He could be outside your bedroom right now. Watch out what you're doing, teenager. He can get you. So it's just, But I guess you roll with it.
You do roll with it, but I also like the fact that that is the way to end that movie, right? Because if the concept is, it is this unstoppable evil, it is death, which is unstoppable, it's going to get all of us. Yeah, you can unload a clip into this thing, and it's still going to come. It's still going to come for you.
You made me knock him down, because I guess that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Reviewing Halloween Ends is going to be really interesting.
Well, I'm a little concerned because, of course, this is a new trilogy of films, and they definitely go in a different direction from this.
I've heard that. It's like researching a little bit on the Halloween genre. It's like people who are really into this, I guess they've numbers 2 through 4 go into some backstory, and then the other movies, they have a different thing with the Michael Myers and Laurie are actually brother and sister. And
there's Danielle Harris plays a niece in one of them. I think it's 4 and 5, where he's coming after her. Halloween 3, of course. I mean, all of us, I'm just preaching to the choir here, but Halloween 3, of course, is the outlier of all of these. It's called Season of the Witch. It doesn't have Michael Myers, has nothing to do with Michael Myers at all. Did you read about that one at all, Jim?
No, I didn't catch that one.
So the concept of that one is it's an evil Halloween mask maker, and he gets some sort of weird Celtic power from Stonehenge, and if he can puts this device in the mask, and then if you have this commercial that runs, and if the kids put the mask on when the commercial's running, it kills them.
Oh, so it's a little tiny bit like The Ring.
completely,
Tiny bit. When you watch a
completely
video
ra-
and
yeah.
then 7 days later.
Yeah, because
dead.
the producers had this idea of, hey, we can make a new Halloween movie every year, but it won't be Michael Myers. It'll be some
Right.
other random
Right.
story, right? A Tales from the Crypt kind of thing. And yeah, nobody went to see Halloween 3.
No, it's got to be Michael
Yeah,
Myers.
so it
You got to
was
see that guy with
back
the
to
mask.
Michael Myers. But yeah, it just, to me, John Carpenter had a limited involvement with Halloween 2, which takes up right after this scene at the end of Halloween. It starts with that scene and then picks up right from there. John Carpenter didn't really have any interest in doing any sequels to Halloween, which is, much to his credit. This movie
Yeah.
didn't need any sequels ever, or remakes, or reboots, or any of that
No,
stuff.
he definitely moved on with his career. He did. Yeah.
And Rob Zombie has a Halloween reboot and then a sequel to his own reboot, which I think make a grievous mistake in giving you this whole backstory about young Michael Myers. One of the reasons the original is so effective is the only backstory you have about Michael Myers is we see him kill his sister, and then it's Donald Pleasance basically saying, I tried to help this guy, and now I am trying to stop this evil from ever getting unleashed.
Yeah, it's the mystery is nice. I think good horror movies have that sense of mystery. That, again, going back to that, we've talked about this before, is like your imagination's pretty powerful. Lots of times, what your imagination can conjure is more powerful and scary than if, the director or producer shows you. So, yeah, to their credit, Halloween is, you just leave it up to your imagination.
Yeah.
What's the deal with Michael Myers? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, and so in some of the other sequels, Jamie Lee Curtis comes back. She actually gets killed in one of the sequels. I think it's Halloween H2O, but it might be Resurrection. I don't remember which one it is. And so this new trilogy...
Yeah, where Halloween ends is the end of a new
this
trilogy.
new trilogy actually says, forget all the sequels completely. We're starting new. And so the concept of the new trilogy is Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of this survivalist person. She's waiting for Michael to come back. She knows he's going to still come for her, and she's prepared now.
Okay.
And so
it's the battle.
So anyway, I'm a little concerned about you watching the final entry in the trilogy, because there may be a scenario where you just have no idea what the hell is going on.
Yeah, but if you had seen 2 and 1, you would know. But there's no way in the world I'm going to watch 1 and 2. So I don't do that.
Well, and I'm not saying they're that good. I mean, the Halloween reboot, the most recent one, I didn't hate. The second one, if you really like gore, that one's pretty good.
Okay.
But as far as, was I scared or anything like that? No. The only one of these that's legitimately scary is, of course, John Carpenter's original.
The original, yeah. To bring us up a point I was kind of thinking about here, about this point is, here we are, Roger and Gene at the movies and review horror movies. But here, I like I just said, there's no way I'm watching Halloween, one, or watch the new version that ends in Halloween Ends, the other 2 of that reboot. So if I'm not watching all horror movies, then how can I really comment? But in my defense, I think I'm going to really try to stick to what I'm going to call good horror that tries to really scare you, that has got really artistic merit, or movies that were groundbreaking at the time, like Blair Witch Project, groundbreaking. This movie at the time, 1978, was immensely popular. So, it influenced horror movies, up to this day. So we're definitely going to review that. Yeah, even if I don't like it.
Yeah.
So, but we're definitely going to review movies that if I don't like, that had a powerful influence on the genre.
Well, and I was interested to do this episode just because you're the first person I've met in I don't know how long that is like, I've never seen that movie before. And so it was interesting because I can only talk about this movie from my own perspective, right? And I saw it in 1978, which scared me. It was great. And I've seen it multiple times over the year. It's generally a once-a-year watch just because, in my opinion, it is so masterfully constructed. And, of course, I know that it led to all these other slasher movies that I just love. And so it was really interesting for me to hear yep, here's modern day guy watching this movie for the first time, and it's like basically like, well, that movie sucked.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of movies, though, isn't it? Is that we're all, of course, we have to be ourselves, you know, and we have our own perceptions, and we all live in a little bit in our own reality. And so we all have our likes and dislikes, and that's awesome. That's makes humanity great.
But I guess that's all we've got for Halloween.
That's
then.
all we got. Yeah, next week, well, Halloween ends.
Yep, Halloween
And we're
ends.
going to do, again, 20th anniversary of The Ring. We're going to do that as well.
Yeah, we'll fit the ring in there. So we will catch you then. Bye-bye.
Later.